At exactly 5:52 a.m. on December 26, 1996, a quiet home in Boulder, Colorado, became the center of one of the most disturbing mysteries in American history. A mother dialed 911. Her voice was shaking. Her words were frantic. She said her 6-year-old daughter had been kidnapped. What she didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that the child was already dead. Inside the house. This wasn't just a murder. This was the moment America realized that some crimes never let go. If you think you know the JonBenét Ramsey case, stay with me, because one detail you're about to hear changes everything. Picture-perfect family. JonBenét Ramsey wasn't just any child. She was a beauty pageant star. Smiling, polished, photographed constantly. Her face was already familiar to America, blonde curls, bright eyes, glittering costumes. Her family appeared perfect. A wealthy father, a former beauty queen mother, a beautiful home in one of the safest cities in the country. Nothing about their life suggested danger. And that's why this case still haunts us. The ransom note that made no sense. On the kitchen staircase, Patsy Ramsey found a ransom note. Not a short note, not a rushed message. A 3-page letter written inside the home demanding $118,000. An oddly specific amount, matching John Ramsey's recent bonus. It warned them not to call police. They called anyway. From that moment on, everything spiraled. A crime scene that fell apart. Friends were invited over. People moved freely through the house. Evidence was touched, cleaned, destroyed. Police didn't seal the scene. And somewhere inside that chaos, the truth slipped further away. Hours later, JonBenét's father discovered her body in the basement. The kidnapping was a lie. This was a murder, the question that never went away. From that moment, America became obsessed with one question. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? An intruder? A family member? A mistake covered up? Every theory feels possible and impossible at the same time. That uncertainty is why this case never died. Why this case is different. Most murders eventually fade. This one didn't, because it wasn't just about a child. It was about privilege, media pressure, police failure, and silence. Evidence that should have been simple became controversial. Witnesses contradicted each other. Experts argued for decades, and the case remained unsolved. Why you're still watching? If you're feeling unsettled right now, that's not an accident. This case forces us to confront something uncomfortable. What if the truth was always there, but buried under mistakes, assumptions, and fear? Christmas night, December 25th, 1996, should have ended quietly. The Ramseys had just returned home from a holiday party at a friend's house. JonBenét was exhausted. According to her parents, she fell asleep in the car, carried inside, and put straight to bed. Nothing unusual. No arguments, no screaming, no signs of danger. At least that's what we're told. But somewhere between 10:30 p.m. and 6 a.m., everything went wrong. And the most unsettling part? No one can agree on what happened during those hours. Conflicting stories begin. John Ramsey said he read to JonBenét before bed. Patsy said she didn't. Later, John changed his story. Small detail? Maybe. But in unsolved cases, small contradictions become massive cracks. JonBenét was last seen alive inside the house. No witnesses, no forced entry, no clear timeline. From the very first night, the truth fractured. The pineapple problem. On the kitchen table sat a bowl of pineapple. Inside JonBenét's stomach, medical examiners later found partially digested pineapple. Her parents said she was asleep when they got home, meaning she shouldn't have eaten anything. So who gave it to her? Why was it there? And why did no one mention it until police asked? That bowl became one of the most quietly damning pieces of evidence, because it suggested JonBenét was awake that night. A house full of shadows. The Ramsey home was large. 3 stories. A maze of rooms, staircases, and a basement few people used regularly. If someone moved through the house that night, they could do so without being heard. That possibility opened the door to the intruder theory. But here's the problem. Police found no clear signs of forced entry. No broken locks. No shattered windows, except one basement window already broken months earlier. Could someone have entered and left unnoticed? Or was the danger already inside? The basement room. Deep in the basement was a small, windowless room, often called the wine cellar. That's where JonBenét's body was eventually found. She had suffered a massive blow to the head. She had been strangled with a cord tied to a paintbrush handle. Her wrists were loosely bound. This wasn't quick. This wasn't accidental. And it didn't look like a simple kidnapping gone wrong. The ransom note revisited. Whoever wrote the ransom note had time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't sloppy. It used unusual phrases. It referenced movies. It demanded a very specific amount of money. Most disturbing of all, it was written inside the house using materials from the Ramsey home. That means the writer was comfortable enough to sit down and write 3 pages, while JonBenet was either alive or already dead. That alone shattered the idea of a panicked intruder. The timeline that never fits. Here's what investigators struggled with. The blow to the head likely happened before the strangulation. There may have been a gap of 45 minutes to 2 hours between the 2 injuries. JonBenet may have been unconscious but alive during that time. So what happened in between? Why wait? Why stage a crime scene? Why write a ransom note if the child was never leaving the house? These questions still have no answers. Someone was awake. Lights were on in parts of the house. The pineapple was eaten. The note was written. This wasn't a crime committed in total darkness. Someone was moving around. Someone was thinking. And someone believed they wouldn't be caught. The most dangerous hour. Experts believe the critical window occurred after midnight. That's when mistakes are made. That's when fear sets in. That's when plans change. Whatever happened to JonBenet happened inside that house, under that roof, while others slept or pretended to. Why this night still matters. This wasn't just a murder. It was the beginning of a decades-long battle between evidence, public opinion, and truth. Because once the sun rose, the narrative was already forming. And by the time police truly understood what they were dealing with, it was too late. In the next chapter, we'll look at the investigation itself and the shocking mistakes that may have permanently destroyed this case. If you want to understand how a murder can go unsolved for decades, subscribe now, because what the police did next may have made justice impossible. By the time police realized JonBenét Ramsey had been murdered, the crime scene was already compromised. And that mistake would echo for decades. A crime scene that was never secured. When officers arrived at the Ramsey home that morning, they treated it like a kidnapping, not a potential homicide. Friends were allowed inside. Family members wandered freely. People cleaned surfaces. Evidence was moved, touched, and destroyed. In any major crime investigation, the first rule is simple. Lock it down. That never happened. Instead, the house became chaotic, a place of grief, confusion, and irreversible contamination. The fatal decision. At around 1 p.m., hours after the ransom deadline had passed, police asked John Ramsey and a friend to search the house from top to bottom. That single instruction may be one of the most damaging decisions in modern criminal investigation history. John went straight to the basement, straight to the wine cellar, straight to JonBenét's body. How did he know where to look? Or did he stumble onto it? We'll never know, because the moment he picked her up, the last intact evidence was destroyed. The body that should never have been touched. John carried JonBenet upstairs. He placed her on the living room floor. Her father's sweater fibers transferred onto her body. Her position was changed. The ligatures were disturbed. At that point, forensic reconstruction became nearly impossible. Police had lost their chance to read the scene accurately. A department overwhelmed. The Boulder Police Department had never handled a case like this. A wealthy family, a national spotlight, a child beauty queen, and a crime scene already compromised. They were unprepared, and it showed. Critical interviews were delayed. Formal interrogations took weeks. Key evidence wasn't tested immediately. In homicide investigations, time is everything. And time was wasted. The media storm explodes. Within days, the case went national. JonBenét's pageant photos flooded television screens. Speculation replaced facts. Suddenly, everyone had a theory, and the Ramseys weren't just grieving parents. They became suspects in the court of public opinion. Talk shows dissected their behavior. Experts debated body language. Every word they said was analyzed. The investigation turned into entertainment. Parents under suspicion. Police began focusing heavily on the Ramseys. The ransom note seemed personal. The amount matched John's bonus. The handwriting raised questions. Then there was the staging, the bindings, the note, the unusual cord. Investigators believed someone inside the house may have tried to cover up an accident or rage-fueled act. But without clean evidence, suspicion wasn't enough. The grand jury twist. Years later, a grand jury was convened. They reviewed evidence for months. Their conclusion shocked the public when it was finally revealed. They voted to indict both parents, not for murder, but for child abuse resulting in death and covering up the crime. But the district attorney refused to sign the indictment. No charges were filed. The case remained officially unsolved. The damage was done. By then, critical DNA evidence was degraded. Witness memories faded. Public trust evaporated. The case had become too contaminated legally, forensically, and emotionally. Even today, experts argue that no jury could ever see this case clearly. Too much was lost. Too many mistakes were made. Why justice slipped away. This wasn't just a failure to solve a murder. It was a failure of procedure, pressure, and priorities. The police wanted answers, fast. The media wanted a story, and the truth got buried beneath both. What comes next? In the final chapters, we'll confront the theories. Intruder versus inside the home, DNA evidence, and the suspects that still divide America. And in the end, you'll have to decide, was this a brutal crime by an unknown intruder? Or was the truth hidden in plain sight from the very beginning? Subscribe now because the next chapter exposes the theories no one agrees on, and why this case still haunts America nearly 3 decades later. There are 2 sides to the JonBenét Ramsey case, and after nearly 3 decades, neither has won. Theory 1. The intruder did it. This theory says JonBenét was killed by someone outside the family. A predator who entered the house, committed the crime, and disappeared without a trace. Supporters point to the DNA. Small amounts of unknown male DNA were found on JonBenét's underwear and long johns. This DNA did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. For many, that single fact is everything. If the DNA belongs to the killer, then the Ramseys are innocent, and the real murderer is still out there. Evidence that fuels the intruder theory. There were unlocked doors that night. A basement window was already broken, an easy entry point. Neighbors reported strange noises in the area. There were signs of prior prowling in the neighborhood weeks earlier. And most chilling of all, the crime appeared sexually motivated, something difficult for many to imagine coming from within the family. Supporters argue this was a sadistic intruder who took advantage of chaos and poor police work. But here's the problem. No clear footprints, no obvious exit path, no confirmed eyewitnesses, and no evidence of forced entry that night. A criminal capable of such violence would have left something behind, especially in a house full of clutter and tight spaces. Yet the intruder seems to vanish like smoke. Theory 2. It happened inside the home. This theory doesn't always accuse the parents of murder, but it does suggest the crime began inside the house, possibly as an accident followed by a cover-up. The ransom note is the strongest piece of evidence here. 3 pages long, written calmly, using phrases familiar to the Ramseys, written with paper and pen from the home. Why would an intruder take that risk? Why write a ransom note after the child was already dead? The staging argument. Experts believe the scene shows signs of staging. The loose wrist bindings, the cord tied over clothing, the delayed strangulation. These elements suggest an attempt to make the crime look like something it wasn't. If so, the motive wasn't kidnapping, it was concealment, where Burke fits in. Then there's Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's brother. Some theorists believe a sibling altercation escalated. A blow to the head. Panic. Adults stepping in to protect their surviving child. There is no proof of this theory, but it refuses to die. Burke has never been charged. He has never been officially named a suspect. Yet public speculation continues, fueled by interviews and body language analysis. Why no theory fully works? Here's the truth most people avoid. Every theory has holes. The intruder theory can't explain the ransom note. The family theory can't explain the DNA. And the police mistakes mean we may never know which evidence mattered most. This case exists in a permanent gray zone, where facts collide and answers disappear. The role of bias. Once people choose a side, they rarely change it. Confirmation bias takes over. Every new piece of evidence gets filtered through belief. That's why this case never fades. It's not just unsolved, it's unresolved. Why America still can't let go. This wasn't just a crime. It was a cultural moment. A child beauty queen, a wealthy family, a crime on Christmas. Touched something primal, fear, innocence, and trust. And because no one was ever convicted, the story refuses to end. The question that lingers. If you believe the DNA is key, the intruder is real. If you believe behavior tells the truth, the answers are closer to home. Which do you believe? And what if both sides are wrong? Nearly 30 years later, the murder of JonBenét Ramsey remains frozen in time. No arrest, no conviction, no closure, just questions that refuse to fade. The DNA that changed everything. In the early 2000s, advances in forensic science reignited hope. Investigators re-examined the unknown male DNA found on JonBenét's clothing. In 2008, this DNA was entered into the national database. The result? No match. But that didn't mean it was useless. Supporters of the intruder theory saw this as confirmation that the killer was still unidentified, not a family member. Others argued the DNA could have come from manufacturing, packaging, or contamination. One piece of evidence, two opposite interpretations. Modern technology, old evidence. Today, law enforcement has tools investigators in 1996 could only dream of. Genetic genealogy, advanced touch DNA analysis, AI-driven pattern matching. In recent years, cold cases older than JonBenét's have been solved using these exact methods. So why not this one? Because the evidence is fragile. The DNA sample is tiny. Some items were mishandled early on. The chain of custody isn't perfect. Technology can only work with what's left. The official shift. In 2008, the Boulder District Attorney publicly cleared the Ramsey family, citing DNA evidence. For some, this was justice. For others, it was deeply controversial. Critics argue that clearing suspects doesn't mean the mystery is solved, only that prosecution is unlikely. The case remained open, but momentum slowed. Public memory versus legal reality. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This case may never see a courtroom. Even if a suspect were identified today, proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt would be almost impossible. Too much time has passed. Too many narratives exist. Too much evidence is compromised. Justice requires clarity, and this case is anything but. Why JonBenét still matters. Despite everything, JonBenét Ramsey is not forgotten. Her name still trends. New documentaries still spark debate. Every update reignites hope or outrage. Because this case isn't just about who did it. It's about how systems fail, how mistakes compound, and how innocence can be lost twice, once in death and again in the search for truth. The question no one can answer. Was the killer a stranger who vanished forever? Or was the truth buried under fear, protection, and silence? And if the answer is still out there, does anyone have the courage to face it? What this case leaves behind. JonBenét's case changed policing procedures nationwide. It reshaped how crime scenes are secured, how media interacts with investigations, how public opinion can shape justice. Her legacy is tragic but powerful. The final thought. Sometimes, the scariest mysteries aren't the ones with monsters hiding in the dark. They're the ones hiding in plain sight. And until the truth is known, JonBenét Ramsey will continue to haunt America. Not as a headline, but as a reminder of how fragile justice can be. If the story made you think, if it made you question, if it made you angry, subscribe to the channel. Because the cases that go unsolved are the ones that matter most. And we're not done telling their stories.